It's Thursday evening here in Israel after Yom Kippur. Gmar Hatimah Tovah to everybody who is Jewish or celebrates Yom Kippur, etc., etc. Anyway, so yes, may you have a good signature in the book of life, as we say. I want to talk with you guys about what happened today, actually last night and today, at sea off of the coast of Israel in the area of the blockade around Gaza when Greta Thunderbird and her fearless friends on the Freedom Flotilla, whatever it was called, the Samud Flotilla or whatever, aboard 40 different ships, numbering something around 500 people, plus minus maybe a few. They were intercepted by the Israeli Navy and they were brought to the Israeli port of Ashdod, where they are being processed. And once they're processed, they're being deported back to their countries of origin. And once again, the Freedom Flotilla, or whatever they're called, did the unthinkable. What is the unthinkable, you might say? Did they attack the IDF soldiers? No, they didn't attack the IDF soldiers. What did they do? Well, the great irony that they did a few months ago in their first or second Freedom Flotilla, whatever it was, when Greta was on board again, or the first time, back in June of this year, um, she and her friends proceeded to pollute the Mediterranean Sea with all of their electronic devices last time. And they had a smaller flotilla, but they still dumped a lot of devices overboard. And you could see them doing it on their own videos of their own boats. That is a violation of the MARPOL 5, which explicitly states that it is a crime to pollute in the sea, and there are specific fines that countries can levy against offenders. And in Israeli law, there's also a set of laws, and the amount of money can vary from, a very small fine, depending on what was thrown overboard, to up to millions of shekels per individual polluting. And as a group, they can be fined even more. And by the way, not just the organizer of the flotilla, not just the crew, not just the passengers, but also the captain of the vessel can be individually fined up to millions of shekels. And it can be even more. It can even be millions of dollars, depending on the size of the pollution, etc. Well, last time they did this, they were not fined for their intransigence and their pollution. And of course, you might say, well, what does it have to do with anything? Well, what it has to do with is that Greta Thunderbird made herself famous back in the day by being a climate activist, an environmental activist, an eco warrior, so to speak. How dare you? You remember that? That was all about the environment and climate change. Obviously, polluting in a very delicate ecosystem like the sea, and namely the Mediterranean Sea, is a very bad thing, right? The average phone weighs about, what, a half a kilo? The average laptop weighs a few kilos or whatever. There's a lot of plastic, there's a lot of lithium, there's a lot of cadmium, there's a lot of mercury, there's a lot of lead in these devices, a lot of plastic, in some cases glass, and sharp metal edges on all kinds of internal parts. These are things that are not good for the sea, and certainly not good for the sea life. And they just threw them overboard, polluting the environment. No, and they bore no penalty for that. Well, this time it's the second time they've been abducted. They've been intercepted. Now they're going to clip that, right? is the second time that they've been intercepted, or the third, however many of these flotillas there are, in this latest violation with their 40 boats, right? They have now dumped, just in this latest round, an estimated 850 kilos of toxic e-waste into the Mediterranean. Toxic electronic waste. 850 kilos. That's an estimate based on, if they each had a laptop and a phone, right? Or if some of them had a laptop, others didn't have a laptop, some of them might have had a couple of laptops. It's an average of like one phone plus a laptop, because pretty much you can bet everyone had at least a phone, since they're all like social media influencers and activists and politicians, and they were all tweeting out their heart's delight with all their goofy selfies and everything else in their, acid trip parties in Ibiza or whatever they were doing there for some nights during this flotilla, right? And God knows what they were doing when they were in Tunisia. It was a big party for them more than anything, an attention-getting party, and that's what they got. Got a lot of attention on their little party, little paid-for party by the suckers that were giving them money to go send them with a few bags of food. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? They take 40 boats, fill it mostly with people, and then put a little bit of food in each boat. Some of those boats were like small little boats. I mean, they're ridiculous. They weren't ships, they were boats. So whatever they brought was probably less than the weight of the people they're carrying. But anyway, this time, like I said, they dumped 850 kilos of material estimated, which would take, at the very least, easily hundreds of thousands of dollars, or more likely millions of dollars, to actually go and dig up every single piece of material from the ocean floor, because you got to go pretty deep, right? Yes, it's the Mediterranean. It's certainly not the deepest ocean in the world. It's not even an ocean; it's a sea, but still, it's pretty deep. And to send divers down, or submarines, or whatever you got to do, it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's not the easy thing to do. And we know they did it because, once again, they had devices with them, and they were stopped apparently without their devices. They were intercepted without devices, meaning they got rid of them overboard, right? I believe there's also recordings of them doing it this time. I don't know. I didn't see it this time yet, at least not yet. But I know that the reports are that they did that, and that it happened once again, which means that now, on multiple occasions, they have polluted the seafloor and the sea in general, and have, directly inserted things into the sea that are dangerous to the sea life, be they plant or animal, right? And they could each, in theory, be fined millions of shekels, if not dollars. And as a group, they could be fined even more. And if they did it with intention, even like, it's with malice they did it. And I say with malice because, sure, they may say, well, we didn't mean to harm the ocean floor. Yeah, but you did. And you knew you did. And you knew it from the last time you did it, that it was harmful to the ocean floor. So why would you do that again? And by the way, if they knew they were coming, and they knew they were going to dump their devices, there's no need to dump their devices. If everything they shot, they published proudly, presumptuously, presumably, since they posted it, what is there to hide? What is there? Is there more angles they don't like of their selfies? Are they embarrassed by some things that they did in their content, the film? Kind of a them problem, no? And also, if they had all the time between the time that they knew they were going to get intercepted and the time they did get intercepted, why didn't they just delete their data, right? And because obviously they fear, I guess the Israeli technologists are so good that we would what? Undelete? And yeah, sure, it's possible to undelete some things, but it's also possible to delete certain things very effectively if you know what you're doing. I guess they're just too dumb to know how to do that. So instead, they just decided to throw 850 kilograms of toxic e-waste into the Mediterranean Sea, polluting the Mediterranean Sea once again, endangering the sea life once again in the Mediterranean Sea. And they did that for what? Is that climate activism for you? Is that political? Does that help free Gaza to pollute the sea life in the Mediterranean? Does that help free the Palestinians? Does it help break the blockade for the Palestinians? Does it help give aid to the Palestinians? No, none of that. They literally achieved nothing by polluting in the Mediterranean Sea, other than polluting the Mediterranean Sea, which is a crime. And by the way, they could also be prosecuted from the countries from which they sailed. Of course, they probably won't be, but they had escorts from Italy and Spain, which means, technically speaking, right, they had, because they stopped in ports, I guess, in those countries, and so they had protection from those governments' navies up to a point, right, to when they entered the territorial waters of Israel. And that means that, technically speaking, Italy and Spain could actually prosecute them for the same thing. So they could be prosecuted in Italy and or in Spain and or in Israel. The odds of them getting prosecuted by Spain are extremely minimal. The odds of them getting prosecuted in Italy may be less minimal. They don't exactly have the biggest supporter in the prime minister's office in Italy. She's certainly standing pretty strong with Israel, despite whatever she may have said once or twice or a few times that are a bit critical of the government or whatever, but or of the way the military is carrying out the war. But she's a steady ally of Israel, that's for sure. כן, אני יודע עברית. כן, אחי. I don't know why you are leaving, but you speak English. But anyway, אחי, כן, אני מדבר עברית. So the point of this video, right, is to bring up the fact that people, have been giving them too much, how should I say it, attention in the wrong things, which is their silly little propaganda mission, and have been ignoring the actual crime they've committed. The actual crime they committed, I mean, other than entering the blockade illegally in a war zone, or attempting to, which is illegal, apart from that obvious thing, which is a political statement, obviously, they committed a maritime crime. Now, it's not a violent crime. It's maybe you call it, maybe it's a civil infraction, whatever, but it is against the law, okay, to dump pollutants into the sea, to pollute the sea for no reason in a place where you're not allowed to dump things. And they specifically dumped items that are very much forbidden to dump into the sea because of the grave danger that they pose to sea life. And again, you could laugh it off and say, what the hell's 500 laptops and 500 phones? Well, it's 500 laptops and 500 phones from this trip. However many from the last trip, it adds up. It's, easily over, I don't know how many people were on the last trip, I forget, probably 100 people or so, at least, right? On their 12 boats or whatever. So 600 laptops, 600 phones, probably more, I don't know. That's a lot. That's like a ton, literally a metric ton of waste. E-waste, electronic waste. It does not perish. It does not just biodegrade very easily. It's very poisonous when it leaks out, right? When there's leaching happening, the toxins will go into the sea and they will be poisonous to anything that happens to swim nearby, or maybe, take a bite of something that got some poison leached into it. Or maybe if those things break in some way, get smashed in some way through currents and hitting rocks and who knows what, they might eat a piece of plastic, a piece of glass, a piece of metal. These are all bad things, right? And the thing is, it can take a very long time for these things to break down, right? So these things are a toxin for a very long time. They don't just disappear. They don't just dissolve in salt water, right? So yeah, I think that they should be held accountable for this. This is not the first time that she and her friends have done this. They knew they were going to do this again. And they did it again. And they didn't plan for it. And they didn't do anything to not cause yet another violation of the environmental laws, which is very ironic again for a group that is led by a world-renowned environmentalist, eco-warrior type person who made her name to fame, made her name and her claim to fame by literally criticizing people for climate change and not taking care of the environment. Don't you find that a little bit hypocritical? Again, even if you side with her completely on the Gaza issue, whatever, put that to the side. Don't you find it a little bit hypocritical that a person who literally is sitting there for years and years and years and years saying, the environment, don't pollute, is herself an egregious violator of the environment, polluting it with e-toxins and e-devices that have long-lasting toxins. They're very bad for the animals and the plants that live in the sea, and eventually possibly even the humans who consume things from the sea. Right? You ever think about that? Now again, you can tell me, oh, what are you talking about? It's such a small amount relative to what humanity dumps in the sea. Hey, are you here comparing? I'm here pointing out a fact that they violated the law about pollution. Does the speed trap catch every bad driver or every speeding driver? Does the cop stop every speeding driver? No, the cop gives fines to the drivers that he or she stops. Right? So they can't stop everyone, maybe, but when we have a known incident, in fact, recorded on their own video cameras, it certainly seems very evident that they should bear the price. And if the reports are true that they did it again, I didn't see it happen this year, but friends of mine have told me that they did that. And so, yeah, I'm just asking questions. Yeah, you like that? It seems very hypocritical that she and her friends would do this kind of pollution and not face the consequences. And that's why I'm for them facing the consequences of that action. And I think that they should be fined, millions of shekels or whatever the maximum penalty of the law is, because they have flagrantly violated the law on multiple occasions now and polluted the Mediterranean Sea on multiple occasions with literally, on multiple occasions now, a total of more than a ton for sure, more than a metric ton of stuff. And I think that is not an acceptable form of